Hello everyone and welcome to another episode. You would have noticed a slight change in the title. We are changing the title of the On Meaningful Work podcast to Finding Meaning in Work. More on the reasons why in our weekly newsletter. However, today we are joined by an extraordinary guest, Daniel Ajak, whose journey from a Kenyan refugee camp to becoming a distinguished legal advocate in Australia epitomizes resilience and purpose. Daniel is not only a defense lawyer, but also a co-founder of the African-Australian Legal Network, where he passionately works to provide representation and create opportunities for his community. In our conversation, we explore how Daniel's profound personal experiences have shaped his career, his drive to give back, and how he finds deep meaning in his work. Daniel's is truly an inspiring story of overcoming adversity and making a significant impact in the legal landscape and beyond. Please enjoy this conversation with Daniel Ajak. Thank you. Daniel, welcome to the Finding Meaning in Work podcast. Thank you so much for making the time, man. I know you're super busy and you're dodging phone calls and you have all this important stuff coming up, so I really appreciate it.
Pleasure all, and it's I'm glad to be on the podcast. It's really I think it's sort of important, to share sort of people's journeys, with the rest of the community, to really try to sort of inspire those who also, get to work on a daily basis, trying to make an impact or different in the community. So, I think I'm very privileged, to be on the podcast. So, thank you.
No, I think talking about journeys. I think we came about just by coincidence. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and he briefly mentioned, your story, and I thought, I have to have you on because you have quite an incredible journey. So to begin with, can you give us an idea of where you were born and your early childhood?
So it's I'm South Sudanese, so my parents are South Sudanese. Prior to the independence in 2011, it would have been Sudan. Mm-hmm. So I was born in Ethiopia, but my parents had fled the South Sudanese Civil War in the late 80s into Ethiopia. Then I was born in 1991 in Ethiopia, and shortly after that, as a toddler, I think the Ethiopian government was overthrown, and my parents had to then flee to a refugee camp in Kenya called Kakuma, and that's where I stayed until my teens, until I was 13 years of age, and then relocated to Adelaide in South Australia. So I spent my tender years, in a refugee camp in Kenya. Like most, South Sudanese in Australia.
Yeah. Were you born in the camp? Or?
No. So I was born in a camp in Ethiopia.
Oh yeah.
Because sort of like my parents were displaced to Ethiopia, and then I was born, and then there was sort of further sort of violence, with like there was a change in regime. And themselves, they became victim, and so they had to escape that, to find new life in Kenya, And I remember my mum telling me, when they were fleeing, I would have been maybe 4 or 6 months, so like really young, and they had to make that journey, I don't know how long it took, but I can sort of, I can only imagine, what mum and my dad and my sister would have to go through, to cross the border into Kenya.
For sure. Can I ask, what are your earliest memories of that time?
I couldn't remember that. No.
But in general, what are your earliest memories of growing up in Kenya? Or?
Oh yeah, that it's sort of growing up in Kakuma, that I remember. It's sort of it was quite despite the adversities of life, and it's sort of been difficult. I think my parents, took effort, to try and really make it an easy sort of experience for myself and my siblings. So in terms of or like basic needs, we sort of, we had to rely on the United Nations, to be provided food. You had to be counted, so you had a ration, so you had a United Nations or UNHCR card. Those sort of, in terms of collecting rations, that was mainly done by my parents or adults in the family. I went to kindergarten in the camp, and I went to primary school. So when we left to come to Australia, I believe I would have been in primary 4 or 5. And you sort of go to school in the morning. By midday, you would have finished. And a lot of time we spent playing soccer or playing like billiards or just sort of doing what young kids and teenagers did. So
I suppose a lot of listeners of this podcast would have no idea what living in a refugee camp would be like. Can I ask, is there anything that you can talk about in terms of the experience of that time?
Well, you sort of live. There were zones, and then within zone there were groups. So, like, say for example, we're in Footscray today. So, city of Maribyrnong. So the city of Maribyrnong would be a zone. So, say for example, zone 1, and then within the city of Maribyrnong there'll be Footscray, Maidstone, and then similarly, those will be groups. So there'll be group 11, 12, 13. So I lived in group 11, but you sort of live with your cousins and sort of family members. It was still sort of session or sort of portion to that. So those that were within my group, were relatives or family members, or people I identify with, with the same tribe, so same sort of cultural heritage. So in terms, so there was protection in that sense. But you didn't have the luxury of like electricity or like proper plumbing systems. You sort of either lived in tents, or you had houses built from mud. But a lot of the time, you'd sleep on the floor, with the plastic sheet, and there's no real, there's no, I think once it got dark, there was no, it's really, look, I mean, it's sort of, I look back, and it's it's very, I mean, it's unfortunate for those who continue to live in refugees camp, and sort of suffer, while we get to enjoy the luxury of a first sort of nation world in Australia.
What was your schooling like in the camp? Did they have a proper structure? Did they have proper schools?
Yeah, they had a Kenyan curriculum, which I think was sort of based on the British curriculum.
In English?
So it was taught in English. And it was quite hard, and it sort of prepared me, for my journey to Australia and for the schooling year, because it's quite intense. You'll sort of do 8 subjects, and they had a system where if you fail each grade, you then had to repeat, so you can sort of move. You can move from grade 3 to 4, unless if you pass all your subjects.
Okay. Wow.
So if you fail 1 or 2 subjects, then you had to repeat the following year, and I think it sort of helped, because the classes, weren't like you'd have adults in classes, so you'd have all the people, who sort of who didn't get the opportunity to go to school because either they grew up in the village or their lives had sort of been interrupted by the war.
So adults studying with you.
Yeah. So it was really I think that sort of made it a good mixture in terms of trying to bring some I guess in trying to get classroom to really sort of listen and sort of engage in the learning. I think that made it easier rather than having some kids in class or some young people.
Sure.
Or children.
And what were you like in school? Did you enjoy school? Did you enjoy learning? Or were you
I did. I mean, like, it wasn't, you didn't really. I mean, you sort of knew there wasn't really anything past high school, and like especially in the camp, once you finish high school, unless your mark was so remarkable and you had to get a scholarship to go to Canada or come to Australia with scholarship. This is before the humanitarian program started, before government started taking refugees. You really had no, there's no further sort of plan, to undertake university. So that's sort of, like we didn't really have. I didn't really have a dream of what I wanted to be when I'm older. Until I sort of moved here, and then got exposed. The sort of life after high school. You could go to university.
Sure. Can I ask about your parents? If you're open to talking about it, like what during that time, what were they like? How did they influence you?
So like. Dad worked hard, so he worked in the sanitation. So he is a labourer, so they were sort of responsible for all the waste. Setting up like toilets, within the groups in the zone, and they'll carry unlike the system we've got here, you sort of dig holes in the ground, and there'll be big cement that sort of is put on top of it, and then once that hole sort of fills, then you dig another hole. And Dad sort of did that work, so he can provide for me and my sister and my mother. So there were 6 of us. I'm one of 6. Only me and my older sister survived. The other 4 died during the journey. I never got. I'm 5th. So the three sort of before me. The 3 between me and my older sister. They passed away. I think before I was born. So I didn't really. I guess that trauma didn't really. I wasn't exposed to that, but my mum would have gone through that.
Sure.
And then the mum had me, and then she had another young boy, my little brother, and he sort of he died as a toddler. So that I sort of like vaguely remember, but it wasn't. I was still young, to really sort of be able to process it, So it would have been Mum, and Dad who sort of endured all of that. And I think Mum, used like religion or church, to really sort of cop through with that, and I think it's part of her coping mechanism, it really sort of helped her, sort of grow. And she's been part of the church since. She's not a canon. So that's. Like she's dedicated her life, to the church, and she still does that, and then also sort of, that sort of looped me in, and I grew up in Sunday school. I still sort of participate and dance and and that's sort of like a regular thing, on a Sunday. Dad, on the other hand, he's very 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 conservative. He's a tribal sort of elder or chief. So what happened is, when there was a wave, when the Civil War happened, the group of young men, they're sort of referred to as lost boys, So these are young men, who are sort of recruited, to join the SPLA movement against the northern government. So a lot of them sort of went to training camps, and they used to go. How they were sort of recruited. Where like each tribe had to give up like young men, and within those tribes, there'd be adult parents, who went with those young men, and my father was one of them. So when we lived in the camp, a lot of young men, within my tribe, sort of looked up to my dad, and within our family home, we had a lot of young men who lived with us, from our tribe, which Dad was responsible for. So there was that sort of authority at home, and he'd ensured. I stayed with him. I slept with him in his room, and and sort of every night, although he'll have his own dinner, with his colleagues, or sometime, by himself, and if I'm there, I'll sort of, I'll sit with him, but there's always sort of, like a gathering with me, dad, mum, and my sister, and I sort of, before we go to bed, like there'll be a prayer, and dad's still is still heavily involved, in the community and sort of as an elder, and that's how I got my inspiration, to become a lawyer actually. So sort of later on, sort of halfway through my engineering degree, I was like, I want to be like my father, and then I'll switch courses, from engineering to law and commerce.
Sure. So as a young person, did you witness him? Was he playing the role of a chief in the?
So I did,
in the camp.
So if there was sort of, if there are any issues, or sort of tribal dispute, within our tribe, dad, was maybe one of 4 or 5 elders, who'd sort of who'd resolve this dispute, if there was sort of dispute, externally with other tribes, dad also, sort of acted as an advocate, and dispute can range from like family disputes, to issues, where there's of conflict, where there's conflict between our tribe and another tribe, involving physical violence, and then dad and a few of the elders, that's sort of their job, to really to bring sort of stability and peace, and trying to and resolve issues, in a manner that sort of restores harmony and peace among the tribes. So and in like later in my later in my first year of university, because there are a lot of young, there are a lot of members of our community who'd also come from the same refugee camp with us. I knew my father, and they spoke very highly of him, and they said, and they sort of, when I went to university, they were sort of like, they were really admire, the sort of stuff I was taking, and really resonated with what my dad did, and that's what sort of drew encouragement, what sort of inspired me, because they spoke of him as someone, of high integrity, someone, who's fair, and was not scared to call out, like wrongs, so it's. So I was like, if I've got any of his personal trait, because he's not a trained lawyer, he's sort of tribal, but they've got a lot of wisdom, and our customary laws, they know, they probably know different, to the laws they've got, they're just not coded, it's not legislation, so I was like, well, if I've got any of his natural abilities, I want to have a law degree, and be able to serve the community like my father did.
But being a chief, does his sense, is it an innate sense of fairness, or is it something that you would say that he's learned through traditional customs or through traditional, or would you say it's more of an innate wisdom that he had?
Look, I'm not, look, I couldn't really comment on that. I'm not really. I suspect, it's sort of life experiences, and it's sort of, but I've been like in South Sudan within villages, it's sort of, like early on, like as you go through your teens, so that the elders can sort of identify, who the leaders, and who are not, and then those who they sort of see as leaders, like then get, they start to get groomed at an early age, and they give them responsibility, and they're brought closer to older people, to adults, to elders, So if you're, everyone sort of's got a task, So not everyone gets to speak, So there's certain, whether you're negotiating a dowry or like a family marriage, only certain people get to speak, and only those who sort of speak with fairness and sort of eloquent, like get get to speak, and but the the sort of like the elders can see that and because we live in we're very communal.
Yeah.
So it's sort of easy. It's easy to sort of pick who the next generation leaders are.
Yep.
And then they get brought closer to older people. And then they're taught as they go through their phases of like teenage years to being young adults. To then sort of like early in their 30s and in their 40s. So I've got a hierarchy.
Sure.
So that's sort of, and I think that's probably where Dad, would have got it from,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So maybe if we can, I suppose, transition now to, say your journey from the camp to Australia. How did that come about?
So my uncle Abraham, he'd also, he'd left. He'd sort of joined, he'd joined the Liberation Army, or
So this was your uncle?
Abraham. Also, he would have been, he would have been anywhere between the age of maybe like 9 and 13. Not sure. Certainly what age he would have been. But he was under the care of my father through that time, and and in the camp, but he was really bright, so sort of top student in the refugee camp, and he got a scholarship to come to Australia, for university studies in the early 2000s. So he'd arrived here. So when the Howard government, then opened up like humanitarian intake program for South Sudanese refugees, he then sent us a humanitarian form, and we were then able to apply, to be settled in Australia as refugees, So he sponsored me and my sister, and we got the approval. So we arrived in Adelaide, and and I lived with them. Me and my sister lived with them, and he took sort of parental responsibility for both of us. I would have been 13 at the time, and Rebecca would have been probably like 21, in her early 20s.
Also, he was also studying at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah. So he'd grew up in he lived in the refugee camp with us. And completed high school there, and then he would have been just your sort of equivalent of ATAR. It would have been, I don't know, in the top 1%, across the whole Kenyan system. And as a result of that, he got a scholarship. I can't remember. It's sort of similar to us, and him and a few others, sort of came on that program. And then he, just to pay back my father, sort of, because when he left, my dad had asked him, once you go to America, they generalise the whole West as America. Then if you could send my children, a form, it would be grateful. And he acted on that, and it worked out really well.
Wow. So can I ask? So then, as a 13-year-old, coming from the camp to Australia, what was that transition like? Like, how did you get settled in, and how did you get into, school and all of that?
So look, it's like, that would have been the first time I left the refugee camp, to go into the city. So to go from Kakuma to Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya. So that was sort of, so I'd spent more, I never went to boarding school, so I'd never left the outskirts of the camp. So to come to the big city like Nairobi, and sort of get on the plane. And the real sort of shock or surprise, came when we got to Johannesburg, to Joburg, because sort of during the day, you get there, there's escalators, I remember watching Black Eyed Peas, like the singers, on a big plasma screen TV at the airport,
Black Eyed Peas.
Well, then and then we got into we flew here by Qantas to Sydney, and I remember getting on the plane, having chocolate for the first time,
Wow.
and it's really sort of, just a different world, man.
Yeah.
And then once we got Adelaide, it's really I came in winter, I think, July 2004, so it's gonna be 20 years in another month or two. But that you didn't, there's a real excitement, because as we prepared for our journey, you sort of, the whole tribe sits on, and they send their blessing, and they speak.
Yeah.
They speak to a tape recording, just to try and remind you, of why we undertaking the journey, and not to forget the reason we've left, and just sort of self reminders, that you're going to a foreign land, they say, if you're in Rome, do what Romans do, but to the extent not to your detriment,
Yep.
So it's really. Well, look, I think I sort of came at the perfect timing, because it was very exciting in the sense when I got here, I was 13, and I had to go to language school to learn English. But my uncle had already he already established himself, perhaps like he's an Australian, he watching the footy within the at the house, was a normal thing.
Oh wow!
And Port Adelaide, were playing. We're sort of heading to preliminary finals.
Yep.
So I really, I got into the footy very early on, and
Port. Are they still your team, Port Adelaide?
Yeah. And they ended up winning the premiership, in September, ending the Brisbane Lions sort of run.
Yep.
So I had to go. We had to be taken, to by my uncle, taken to appointments, to Medicare, Sanderling, and then enroll in school. I had to go to language school, Adelaide Secondary School of English in Croydon, for 1 year, to learn how to speak English. And I could read and write, but that was sort of to transition to the state school. So I did that for a year, and then I left that to go to Roy Smith Secondary, where I completed year 9 and 10 in the northern suburb of Adelaide in Green Acres, and then I ended up on an academic scholarship to Prince Alfred College.
Wow.
In year 11 and 12, and that was again, sort of like a different sort of new journey.
Yeah. So during your first schooling years in Adelaide, what was that like? Did you take to school? Did you take to studies? Did you have a favorite subject in school?
Look, I had the benefit, unlike some of my friends and some of my cousins, and like most refugees, I had the benefit of having Abraham, at home. He's sort of the father figure, and at the time he was enrolled at the University of South Australia doing a civil engineering degree, so I could, I had someone to assist me with my homework, and at home, so when I came home, with a maths question or science problem or chemistry questions, Abraham was there, and he could really break it down for me and sort of help me and assist me with that. So schooling, was actually, was sort of good experience in terms of getting good grades, in terms of sort of bullying or, it was sort of hard, sort of early on, because, you sort of, live in the refugee camp, you really, as kids or teenagers, you if someone bullied you, you couldn't really go to your parents or your older brother to have a whinge, unless if that person who bullied you was older than you, then that's the only time you sort of had a justification to go there. So you sort of had to stick up for yourself, So early on, and this sort of bullying that I received or racist, sort of remarks, I reacted violently, physically, and but I once I got to Prince Alfred College, all that stopped, I didn't have to, you know. I had a clear vision, you know, of where I wanted to be. And in fact, you know, it's sort of, that's how I ended up at Prince Alfred College, because one of my friends, you know, who went to Roy Smith Secondary College with me, who's a Chinese national and studied, you know, had arrived in Australia, you know, just, you know, around the same time I did, and you know, and English is second language, you know, and he got bullied at school, and I stuck up for him, you know, a few times, got into a few fights with him, you know, and he's the only one who had exposure, you know, that the scholarship did exist, you know.
Oh wow, okay.
So when he was applying for a scholarship to school like Prince's and St. Peter's and Scotch, all the sort of top private school in Adelaide, he said, Daniel, you know, I think you should apply too, you know, because both of us got straight A's, you know. And I was like, well, excellent idea. And then it was really sort of, you know, it was sort of, I was in my, that I was in, you know, and the criteria is that, you know, you're disadvantaged, you know, and you got straight A's, and, you know, and sort of, and I guess sort of had leadership qualities, you know, I really wanted to make it different.
Yep.
And I was able to satisfy those two things. And I think it sort of helped, because when we first arrived here, Abraham already had an established with the local sort of uniting church, you know, that he went to, and, you know, and I joined that, you know, straight away. So I went to Sunday school there. It's quite, I sort of look back at some of the photos, yeah. I was 13, yeah, and like a lot of the kids in that Sunday school, yeah, would have been like 6, 7, 8, you know. But, you know, I still, and, yeah, I think I learned a lot from that experience. But we had family friends, John and Liz Prisvilla, you know, who attended the service and sort of, you know, took on the role.
They were local.
Yeah, they're Australians, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to them, you know, because they also took on that role, you know, of a parent, and were able to provide support, you know, a support letter, you know, to accompany my application for scholarship. Yep. And that's sort of, I think that really sort of went far. And then again, even after that, you know, my sister had to work in a chicken factory, you know, because the scholarship only covered the full tuition fees, you know, which is like $15,000 a year. But on top of that, you still had to pay like $2,000 every term, you know, for like school uniform and all these other sort of fees, you know. Yeah. And John and Les in the church would sort of step in, you know, to sort of, you know, to help my sister, you know, pay for some of that, you know, through year 11 and 12, you know. And, you know, they still sort of remain in my life. And it's really, yeah, so I think, you know, so that, you know, and I still, you know, I still maintain, like, going to Dinka church, you know. I played soccer. I wanted to play club soccer early on, but, you know, my parents sort of pushed back against that. And they were still sort of calling shots, you know, from back home, even though they weren't here, you know. If they said, Daniel, oh, you can't do X, Y, Z, you know, then I just sort of back off. Yeah.
So they were still in Kenya, your parents?
Yeah. But, you know, they were still... they're still very influential.
They're still pulling the strings.
Yeah. So, you know.
So Prince Alfred College is like one of the top schools. Yeah, it's kind of like a Melbourne grammar.
Yeah. So it's an all boys school, and it's really and they're very generous with their scholarship in terms, you know, like in terms of trying to really help those who sort of disadvantaged, you know. So I know there's scholarships for, you know, First Nation, for Indigenous Australian. There's also scholarship, you know, for like for borders, you know, like country kids, you know, who've got potential, you know. There's sports scholarship, music, you know. There's a range of scholarships, you know. Yep. But I was very lucky, you know. I didn't, you know. I would, because, you know, when you come here as a refugee, you know, all these settlement programs, you know, they don't tell you anything. Yeah. You know, like, you're not really, you know. You know, sort of, you know, like I remember, you know, like at home, you know, we didn't have internet. You had to go to the library, you know, just sort of basic stuff, you know. But you're not, you know, and I think that's also sort of part of the problem, you know. A lot of young people sort of growing up here, you know, and the reality is, you know, like within our community, you know, because of the war, you know, and you know, like, you know, we don't really have an educated population, you know, so. Like a lot of kids, you know, who've got no one to turn to help them with their homework, you know, sort of school then gets hard. A lot of schools didn't actually really pick it up, you know, or didn't sort of offer, you know, sort of extra support services to try and ensure, you know, that, you know, like we're getting extra support, you know, outside class, to stay on top of the work, so it's but like once I went to PAC, I formed a new group of friends.
Was it easy for you to make friends, or did you?
Yeah, I've always been very social. Yeah, and I think that probably made it easy to really transition, into or I guess I don't know what you want to say, assimilate or really find. I played footy. I wasn't a good basketball player, so I never really bothered. But I was very good at soccer. But I've always sort of been a people person.
Yeah.
So I've got a really big network of friends, and I'm still friends with those boys from school.
Yeah.
And,
Because you also mentioned that when you went to Prince Alfred College, it kind of awakened something in you. It got you more serious, and you got you more focused.
Yeah, you really are. You sort of once I went there, there's a culture that where you're told your leader, prince's men are leaders, prince's men, go out, to sort of inspire, make a difference in the community, to use their skills and their education, to have an impact, And I was like, it's really, for once, I was like, I'm actually, I wanna finish school, I wanna go to university, and I'm gonna make, I wanna be Prince's man, I wanna make it different, in the community, and that's what that sort of carried, through with me. And look, like my parents, a lot of people in the community who know me know my parents well, I mean, a lot of people I grew up with, they're surprised I've been able to accomplish what I have, because sort of, because I've got I've always sort of been social sort of art, some people sort of had reservation about whether I'll be able to get to where I did, but others sort of can go like, well, your parents are really good people, these sort of values and the sort of traits you have, like came from your parents, so we're not surprised, considering the sort of position your parents hold within our community, and within our society. So people are able to connect the two, but it was at Prince's where I was really sort of reminded to dream big, and sort of reminded of the journey that me and my sister took, which was to come in and get university education, because it's unfortunately there's a lot of like young people, whether it's in the continent, in Africa, or where I come from in South Sudan, who if they get to live, don't really never get an opportunity, to go to university, and really sort of, take on their dreams, either because of poverty, or just because we don't have institutions, who can sort of provide that, or governments, just don't provide that. It's really hard to access it, if you don't have resources. So I've got to take it, I think I'm not privileged, but really, sort of early on, I was like, and it's funny, even with the law journey, like a lot of my friends, like first year university, you're telling us you're gonna do this, and you've done it. So it's sort of it's starting to come full circle,
But your first choice was engineering, wasn't it?
It was.
University.
Yeah, and that's because I did like maths specialist, maths, science, like chemistry and physics and English, and that's and my friend Yinzi Wang, like he was Chinese, we all sort of did the same subjects, he also went on to engineering. We had another mate of us, also from Ross Smith Secondary, but he left and went to another private school. He also, got into aeronautical engineering, but it's So I had actually never done any sort of legal studies.
Yeah.
So when I switched along commerce, I added the commerce so I can keep up my appetite for math.
Yeah.
And something sort of different to law. But it was sort of something new for me.
Yeah.
But I knew if I knew if I can get through it.
Yep.
I can really, I can sort of take, and it was sort of quite clear from first year, first day at law school. My business partner at Sifrid Mertens, he runs our Adelaide office and heads our commercial practice. He also went to law school with me, and he was there on that first day. When I spoke to him and a few other mates, saying, look, I reckon, we have a practice in 10 years' time from today, 5 years after law school, and we can make something for ourselves, but we can really create an opportunity to be able to give back to the community and ensure people have access to justice,
Yeah.
And he,
So that was from your first day of
law school, in 2010.
You made that pact with him.
Yeah, in 2010,
Wow, yeah. And here we are today,
it's in fact, I had sent a few of them a calendar invite, to start in January 2020. So when we launched in April 2020, they're like, Daniel, you're crazy, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But also, so you were studying engineering, and then what, I suppose, when did that switch come on where you're like, okay, I need to stop this and start law?
I reckon after first semester.
Really? That early?
Yeah. After first semester.
Yeah.
So I completed the second semester, but it was after the first semester, and I had lived with one of my uncles, and his wife and his family. His name Professor Robert, and he went to university, in Scotland, in Dublin. He's got a PhD in chemistry, so he's very educated. His wife, she was also very educated, and at that time I was staying with them, and because my sister had gone to America, and I raced with her, and she was really supportive and sort of encouraged me. Her name's Ian, Mama Ian, and she really encouraged me, to sort of pursue that, So I switched, and it's and I think it's sort of the best sort of choice I've ever made, And
because it's kind of remarkable that just very early on in your legal studies, you realize that this is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah, I think it's like when I was making the change, while completing my second semester of engineering, when I was, I sort of went on to law school, with a purpose, and the purpose is to equip myself to be able to set up a practice, so I can make it different.
Yep.
So like.
Where did that come from? That the wanting to make a difference, was that always in you, or did you realize it?
It's I think as a child, I've sort of, I guess I've always sort of let, and I've always sort of been brave in the sort of choices I make, and sort of pretty calculated as well, sort of I'm trying to see two sides of the coins before I make a decision. So it's really and then also sort of having my sort of having parents who've lived sort of purposeful life in terms sort of being there, like my father, he'd lost I think he'd lost his father when he was I think when he would have been 8 or 9 as a child, so he had to learn to grow up by himself, and really fetch for himself, and then he sort of took on the responsibility of taking care of his siblings, and worked really hard, to marry my mum, and like marriages for his brothers, So he'd always led, he's always a leader, and always sort of trying to make, he's always looking out for others, So even in the camp, he'd use his salary, to help, our relatives, because not everyone. There weren't a lot of jobs in the refugee camp. Not even worked. So he'd use his money to provide for and it's a cultural thing, where if you're the one who's got resources, or if you're in an opportunity to sort of earn money, and then you look after, whether they, like your nephews or nieces, where the parents, either they're widowed or the parents just don't have the resources, and then you sort of, if you've got an obligation to really, to give, and sort of bring them along, you can't, So
sure.
I think that's sort of where it also sort of comes from.
I think also just that's kind of reflected in your company and your firm now, and I think with Ajak Associates Lawyers. You seem to have employed a lot of lawyers from African backgrounds and other staff as well.
Look, and it's sort of it's giving people like a go, and I got to have the Prince's experience, which sort of exposed me to much bigger network, and I had friends I could sort of rely on to be able to get a foot in the door into legal practice. So I didn't struggle, getting work straight from university. But I know not a lot of people, like have access to those opportunities, So I also endeavoured my work, or in my practice, or in our practice, to try to really ensure, that there are opportunities, for members of our community or those who find it hard to really get a foot in the door, whether it's through an internship or or just offering placement for practical legal training, and paid employment,
Sure.
and it's really and I think by doing that, because then those lawyers who come here, they move on. They got to have their own practices, but they always remember, that Ajak Associates, made a contribution, to their legal career, So it's really it's trying to empower like them, so they can also empower others, in their new capacity.
So can I ask then? So you started your firm, and then what made the transition to Melbourne happen?
So the firm started in Melbourne.
Okay. Yeah.
So I started practicing in Adelaide. And then I went then I went to Sydney. Then I moved back home to Adelaide. And then I reckon would have been like during 2016, or there's a lot of negative media about like African gang and Sudanese gangs,
Yes.
And I really knew there was a gap in terms of representation from the community as legal practitioners or professional. And I already had an established network of lawyers in Melbourne, but I knew there weren't criminal lawyers, and I knew that there was definitely no one who sort of around the trenches, advocating, for members of our community, even if there weren't, so when other court users, go to court, not only do they see members of our community, sort of as an accused person, but also his sort of his lawyers, and I think, and that's what sort of sparked the journey to move here, and that's what I find when I moved here in February 2017, and worked at a criminal law specialist firm in the city, I was the only lawyer who sort of
'cause I remember that time, but I suppose just in a very superficial sense, like I just remember like the headlines and what was in the media. But can you give us a sense of what was the sentiment in the community during 2017, 2018?
Look, it was really negative, man.
Yeah.
Like it sort of it sort of felt like being kicked on the ground, because like I'm an Australian, as much as someone who's a fifth or sixth generation Australian, because like once you become a citizen, you've got equal sort of rights, so to only be recognised as an Australian, when locks up with a business, you know, I pay taxes, you know, then, you know, people, you know, quick to sort of, like, you know, like well and Daniel, you know, like in Australia, you know, and then, you know, when, yeah, like other young people sort of make poor choices, you know, and then, you know, you sort of get asked cars, you know, and single out South Sudanese, you know, I think that's really unfair. Yeah, but like things have improved, you know, like, you know, that reporting sort of doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, sort of, you know, our society and community sort of, you know, become much more informed. And I guess, you know, like, the sort of media companies, you know, have sort of improved in terms, you know, how they sort of convey that information to the public. So it's, you know, like a lot of complaints from the community would be like, you know, if you're running for Australia, you know, and then you're an Australian, or if you're playing, you know, like all the rules, you know, like you're an Australian, you know, but soon, you know, like the allegations, you know, of violence, or, you know, then like you're South Sudanese, you know, well, what's the difference, you know, like, and, you know, a lot of the kids here, you know, like they either born here or they came in there like as toddlers. This is your home, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was the frustration at the time. And my real concern was that, you know, we weren't represented, you know, and like I wanted to be in court, you know, so even if, you know, even if I was acting for, you know, for non-South Sudanese or Anglo-Australians, you know, are they like young South Sudanese men or African men who come to court, you know, could see me and be like, oh, he's one of us, he's a lawyer, maybe I can be a lawyer one day, you know? Maybe like this is not worth it, you know. And then also, you know, for the bench, you know, and the profession, you know, to see that, you know, they're also South Sudanese lawyers, you know, because, you know, the profession's got to reflect the community it serves, you know.
Yeah, wow.
And you know, yeah, so like that's why, you know, I sort of made the move, and I knew, you know, if I could hone my skill, you know, and learn the trade, you know, the tools, then I could either go and, you know, have my own practice, you know, which I wanted to, you know, or if, you know, if for whatever reason I was going to change my mind, you know, I could go to the bar, be a barrister, you know, and sort of work towards, you know, getting on the bench at some stage, you know. Like I said, there was an opportunity as well,
Yeah. So I suppose we're coming, I suppose, to the end of our conversation, but just so this podcast is about, you know, finding meaning and purpose in the work that you do. Thinking about now the work that you do, what do you find gives you meaning and purpose, and what pushes you forward? You know?
Look, it's like clients really appreciate what we do, you know, and our clients are very vulnerable, you know, whether they're Anglo or they're newly arrived migrant refugees, you know, or the members of my community, you know. You know, there's real sense, you know, of you know, of like gratitude from them, you know, towards the work we do, you know, and you know, I mean, we're generalist practice, you know, we don't only do criminal defence work, and Sifrid, you know, who's based in Adelaide, you know, he runs a corporate commercial practice, but in terms of our clients, you know, who sort of go through the justice system, you know, it's really important, you know, when they know that they've been heard and they've been listened to, you know, and that you sort of guard it, you know, like, you know, you sort of, like, you're fighting for the underdog against the state, you know, because the state's got all the resources, you know, to prosecute, you know, and you know, your job, you know, is really, you know, is to ensure, you know, that, you know, the rights of the accused, you know, or that vulnerable client, you know, are upheld, and I think, you know, it's, you know, when I get text messages from clients, you know, or from their families, you know, to say, you know, oh, thank you for today, you've really fought hard, you know, like, you know, like that, you know, that sort of speaks volume, you know, and also just sort of seeing clients' journeys, you know, from when I first, you know, saw them in court or in the cells, you know, and just seeing, you know, some of the transformation they've made, you know, like, you know, that's, you know, yeah, to me, you know, that's sort of, yeah, that's really, that's where you get to really see, you know, that the work you're doing, it's meaningful, you know, and you, and you're making, you know, like you're making an impact, you know. And it's, I mean, you sort of look at sort of Google reviews, you know, and, you know, it's like you're working with people, you know, So if you can help someone avoid custody, like jail, like that's huge, man. Because not a lot of people go into custody and come back. Okay. It's once you go into custody, it could turn your life upside down. So it. Yeah, I think and that's what I think our services sort of needed, across nationally, and we'll be taking the steps, to try to ensure, that people, that we're in all sort of spaces, to ensure people have access, to justice, and that, and that's why I moved to Footscray, like if I'm in Footscray, it's really, it's easy for clients, to sort of navigate, it's not complex like the city where you might have to get a city loop, you might have to get a tram, and then find parking, paid parking, so it's hard work, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah. And so what's in the future for you, Daniel? Like, say, you set up this incredible firm, you're doing incredible work for the community. But what are the next steps, do you think?
Look, I think that the practice still sort of it's in infancy. It's in infancy. But I really want to equip like the sort of current lawyers, and the next sort of lawyers who come to the firm, to try and equip them with the vision, so they can sort of carry it forward, because in another 10 or 15 years, or in another 10 years, or 15 years, I'll sort of like to move away from this and sort of move on to other stuff, to other things. So it's really important, that like the current lawyers, who work at the firm, and the sort of new lawyers who sort of join the firm, like they get the vision, and really sort of buy into it, so it's sort of in perpetuity, I guess, like I can move on, or Super can move on, and they can sort of carry on, the legacy and continue to make it different.
Well, Daniel, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for your time. This has been quite a conversation, and you've had just an incredible journey. It's going to take me some time, I think, to put how I feel into the words, but I'm just so inspired and grateful that you would do this, and inspired by also the work that you do, because you're really helping vulnerable people navigate this mess of a legal system. So thank you so much.
And thanks, Rahul, and to your audience, it's I think share the podcast with your friends and the community. I'll do the same as well, and I think we need to hear more from those who sort of who go out of their way on a daily basis to really to sort of try to have a meaningful impact in their work and make a difference to the members of our community.
For sure. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying and are learning from this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. A great zero-cost way to support us is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are feeling extra generous, it'd be great if you could leave a comment or feedback on our Apple Podcast or YouTube pages. Or you could email your comments and feedback to me directly at rahul@disruptivebusinessnetwork.com. That's RAHUL at disruptivebusinessnetwork, all one word, .com. Finally, a big shout out to our producer Dan Scahill for his work on the keys, and to Vashti Civil for writing the original music for our theme. Until next time, this is your host, Rahul Sones, signing off. Bye.